Oh, Xbox Game Pass. You just keep surprising me. Gungrave is a franchise I don't think I've heard a peep from since maybe around the mid-2000s. I know there are 2 PlayStation VR games out there, but I've never had a chance to play them. It was originally a Sega action game on the PS2 and was well received enough to get both a sequel and an anime. I actually have fond memories of renting the original back in college and playing it with friends during our off periods. I even watched the anime week by week back when it aired. So yeah, when I saw that there was a new Gungrave game on Game Pass and it was available to just download, what a f***ing age we live in. The nostalgia kicked in hard and I downloaded it immediately. But that was just impulse. How did the actual game itself turn out? Was it good enough to enjoy beyond nostalgia? Did it stand on its own as a worthy new entry in the series? Well,
why don't we find it out now?
The G.O.R.E in Gungrave G.O.R.E stands for Gunslinger of Resurrection. Yeah, I know, just roll with it. The game once again puts you in the shoes of silent protagonist Grave, a resurrected former mobster turned genetically altered bullet sponge and killing machine. Well, actually Grave is just what other people call it. Despite that and the title, your main character's name is actually Death Beyond the Grave. Or if you really want to go far back, this may sound dumb as hell, and it is. But remember, this is a series with character names like Rocket Billy Red Cadillac, Zell Condor Brave, and Bob Poundmax. You know.
It's me, Bob Poundmax.
It fits the tone of the game is what I'm saying. Grave now works with a team to take down the creators of a drug called Seed, which is turning cities into slums and people into actual monsters. Grave and Company's approach to rampant drug use is not dissimilar to the classic action game Narc. Whether it's mobsters, monsters, or inanimate objects, it's all in the way and it all needs to be shot. Actually, that's not fair. Narc at least gives you the option to not shoot everyone you see. As in previous outings, Grave comes equipped with his twin pistols as well as a giant coffin bazooka that he keeps slung over his back. Since this is a direct sequel to the PS2 titles, the game includes a recap section to bring you up to speed. And in only 10 minutes.
That's strange indeed.
Okay, this will either you off or seem like a fair compromise to looking up a YouTube recap. I mean, I feel like it's one or the other here. The main story is told through cutscenes and the occasional bit of load screen text. What little of a story there is here anyway. That said, Gungrave has always been a game series that was more style over substance. So maybe it's better we look at how the game presents itself first.
Nice! That's the way you do it!
There are things I loved about Gungrave G.O.R.E's presentation and things I didn't. Now, first things first, character designs of the original game were designed by Yasuhiro Naito, the man who created the Trigun manga. He's back on this project as image director, so right off, that's a good start. The stage variety is varied enough to never feel too repetitive or boring. I noticed that some level designs would make reappearances later on, but I'll give the team credit for not just throwing 5 of a single stage type at us every time. It really helps in keeping you engaged and not having your eyes glaze over from staring at the same thing for too long. The layout of each stage feels like something from a mid-2000 action game. There are a lot of extra rooms that seem to be there solely to house groups of enemies to shoot. Also, there are a lot of halls and areas that just kind of go nowhere. Though later in the game, when you really need to get out of the line of fire, those odd little spaces end up becoming a strategic retreat. The stages are broken down by level, giving you access to each one via a menu screen that pops up in between stages. The stage select gives you a ranking scoreboard per level and a difficulty select between the usual easy, normal, and hard. That said, there is some post-game content here. Beating the game will unlock new extras depending on the number of difficulty levels cleared. You can get a new weapon upgrade for both of your mains, along with a new G.O.R.E difficulty level. Character animations are also more or less what I remember, particularly Grave's murder dancing. Speaking of, for a game that has you violently shooting hundreds of enemies per stage, Gungrave G.O.R.E's gameplay is surprisingly bloodless. Some of the cutscenes, however, surprisingly less so. Also, the cutscenes have voice acting that's so stiff, I'm 90% sure that it was done on purpose. The story does keep the tale of Gungrave going, but it's not really the highlight here. But I feel like most people who remember Gungrave will be coming back more for the gameplay than the plot. Speaking of which... Gungrave G.O.R.E takes you through 30 stages over 7 areas. You'll shoot and slash your way through what will at times feel like endless waves of enemies. Fortunately, doing both of those things feels fun thanks to the game's unique combat system. While in control of Gravy, you'll always be armed with 2 pistols, a bazooka coffin that you carry around on your back, and infinite ammo. You'll be fighting through each level using a mix of all your core techniques. Your guns for picking off distant and elevated enemies, your coffin bazooka for close combat and grabbing enemies. And yes, I know it's not technically called that, but that's definitely what it is. That's just fun to say. They also throw in a lock-on feature, but it honestly never felt natural to me. It was definitely the feature I used the least throughout my entire playthrough. The game also gives you a special mode that can be activated with the press of both triggers. This will give you a temporary damage boost, which can really come in handy during boss fights. Also, you have special attacks, which can be unleashed after building enough meter. In order to build meter, you'll need to keep your attacks going in a combo system the game calls beats. Building up your beats has 2 main advantages. The first is that after 50 beats, you unlock your bullet dance, which gives you access to your second attack that lets you break out the gun kata. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, however, since you're left completely vulnerable in this mode. Actually, maybe this isn't like gun kata at all. Gun kata has a focus on not getting shot. You can also enter a different rapid-fire mode by repeatedly tapping a right trigger a few times for more damage and a slower meter build. The same rules apply here too, though. Rely on it too much and perish. Each time it gets filled up, you earn a demolition point, which can be used to perform a demolition shot with the aid of your coffin bazooka. Sorry if you're tired of hearing coffin bazooka. The thing is, I'm not tired of saying it. These attacks are critical because they are the only way you can regain health during a level. There are no health power-ups to grab. There aren't any power-ups at all, actually. Everything in this game exists to either be smashed or shot, and the game never pretends otherwise. So yeah, there's not much of a collectible element to Gungrave G.O.R.E. Despite the multiple extra rooms you'll encounter throughout the game, there isn't anything to find in them. They pretty much serve as lockboxes for different waves of enemies to hide in until it's time to come out and get shot. That all said, in the later part of the game, they can act as a good refuge from the ludicrous amount of firepower that gets thrown at you. You can grab certain enemy types via the shoulder button to use as a human shield, but that strategy falls apart the closer to the endgame you get. So yeah, regularly pulling off specials is key to surviving, especially in the later stages of the game. Building a higher beat score has one other benefit, your end level score and your reward. At the end of each level, you'll be graded on things like completion time, remaining time, beat score, and style score. Each category gets graded on a scale from D to S, with an average letter score being given for each level. Each graded score nets you a different amount of in-game currency, which can be spent on anything from stat boosts, abilities, and new demolition shot attacks. These new demolition attacks can be equipped up to 4 at a time, and you can recover 1 to 3 bars of health depending on the amount of demolition points used. You'll play through about 95% of the game as Grave, but there are also a few stages that give you control of 2 side characters, a nice manipulating ninja named Quartz, along with the assassin Bunji, who some may remember from the original game and the anime. Their inclusion seemed a bit half-baked at first, given we only got to combine 3 stages total with them, though the extra John Woo love is always appreciated. However, a recent update now gives us the opportunity to play as Bunji across all stages, and I imagine a similar update for Quartz won't be too far behind. It's a free update for the game, but right now Bunji does require in-game currency to unlock. This brings me to one of my bigger criticisms about the game. The progression system. The overall structure of how you unlock currency for the lab is fine, but there are no modifiers here for difficulty level. You'll get the same amount of currency whether you beat a stage on easy or in G.O.R.E difficulty. I know the big unlocks are tied to beating all the stages on each difficulty, but it feels a bit restricting. I also would have loved to see easy completion rewards unlock after beating the game on normal. Forcing a whole other playthrough on easy just to get the gun unlocks feels a bit unnecessary. I mean, achievements and trophies don't work that way. But maybe that's just what PS2 era focused game design gets you sometimes. A currency bonus for beating a stage on hard would have incentivized me to play more stages on something other than normal, especially when G.O.R.E difficulty doesn't even give you a chance to retry after death. The game also tries to throw in a few platform and dodging segments, but they're thankfully sparse. I appreciated them trying to add a little more variety, but they're easily the weakest parts of the whole experience. Between the numeric score and ability unlocks, it feels easy to make a Devil May Cry comparison, but this game really is its own thing. Just like it was back in the PS2. That said, the game most definitely sounds like a Devil May Cry title. A lot of the levels here give you that exact same kind of house music, time to die, vocal track OST that DMC was known for. The game does have other tracks that range from more upbeat jazzy tunes to a song that I did a double take on because I was sure it was the Bond theme. I think one of the things I dug about the original Gungrave was that, for me at least, it was the closest we ever got to a Hellsing video game. Gungrave retains a little of that energy with some of its music tracks, though overall, it really is its own thing, even if you do get some Devil May Cry vibes from time to time. Also, the options menu lets you switch between English, Japanese, and Korean voices. You can also switch to the Mafia enemies' voices independently, but in English and Korean only. The soundtrack and sound design are pretty solid overall. The upbeat score really helps you get into the carnage, and the constant sound of Graves' two pistols really helps drive it home. There's nothing grating or just straight up annoying here, which is always appreciated. The team did a solid job on this one, but man, do I ever wish they would bring back that theme sting from the first game.
Gungrave.
Oh, that's the good shit right there. This game really did feel like a throwback to the days of PS2 style gameplay, both for better and for worse. I'm not sure I'd recommend Gungrave G.O.R.E at full price unless you're a really big fan of the series. But for a playthrough on Game Pass? Yeah, I absolutely recommend it. The thing is, you'll probably know after about 5 or 6 stages whether you'll want to stick with it or not. The gameplay is at its lowest during the platforming segments, but thankfully there aren't nearly enough of them included to bring the experience down too much. And yes, I know I've been talking about Gungrave G.O.R.E like it's some kind of Xbox exclusive, but the game is also available for PS4, PS5, and Steam. There's over 10 hours of gameplay here, easy, especially if you're a completionist type and run through it again in the harder difficulties. If you want that Devil May Cry or Bayonetta itch scratched, this game will probably do that for you. But regardless of that, I think Gungrave G.O.R.E succeeds in not just being a fun action shooter, but also in doing things its own unique way. I don't think I've played a game like Gungrave G.O.R.E since the last time I played a Gungrave game, and I respect it for that. If you have nostalgia for the PS2 and a Game Pass subscription, this game is most definitely worth checking out. Just be sure to give your trigger finger a rest, because that really cramps up between stages. Hey everybody, thanks for watching and for sticking it out until the end of the video. We've got more videos on the way, including more top 10s and more reviews. This is Tim from Haruokay. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.